Today I effed up by taking ambien on a plane and teleporting. This Today I effed up is brought to you by an experience I had about 2 years ago that I still think about this day. Long story. Bear with me. Picture this. You're me, a scrawny college kid with terrible sleeping habits and a divine hatred of flying. Naturally, you pick a college that's a 6-hour red-eye flight away from your home on the West Coast. Mom has a stash of ambien she uses sparingly, just for particularly sleepless nights. Anticipating the speak show that is the red-eye, she lends me a few pills each time I head to school. The dose knocks you out for 6 hours at the least. Bingo! My perfect escape from the special hell that is air travel. So at this point, I had a routine. Take a pill right after boarding, sleep through the flight, and wake up well rested just in time for landing. Grab an Uber to school, and lug the bags to the dorm. Easy. After several successes, I got an ego. I thought, hey, flying can't be that bad. Maybe I can sleep through this on my own. And if that fails, I've still got the pill as a backup. So I try falling asleep undrugged. I'm in and out of it, keep waking up at every beep and shuffle and overhead announcement. So I give up. It's still hardly been 10 minutes, so I take the full dose and prepare for bliss. Shortly after, I'm yanked out of my clinical slumber by an announcement that we've begun our descent. That can't be right. I only just fell asleep. Here's where I've peeped up. It hadn't been 10 minutes into the flight when I took the pill. It had been 3 hours. The realization hits me along with a wave of intense nausea. If you've been on ambien, you know that 1, that stuff is potent as hell, and 2, you're not supposed to wake up on it. I'm tripping, and hard. I vaguely call out for a bag, and one appears in my hands. I dry heave all the way to the ground, all the while cursing the robots that I could see growing out of the walls. Somehow my luggage gets pulled down from above and handed to me. I forgot the face of whoever was sitting next to me, but I'm pretty sure they took off running once I woke up and started prophesying the end of the world into my barf bag. As I'm swaying back and forth in the aisle, waiting to deplane, all I can think is, you just have to get to the dorm. Just get to the dorm. My phone goes off. I'm standing at the entrance to the terminal, bags in hand, staring at my own phone as a notification tells me my car has arrived. To this day, I have absolutely no memory of how I got there from the plane, nor how I called a car. I blinked and I was there. I get in the car, yak into the poor driver's old takeout bag, and pass out until we get to school. I lug my stuff up the stairs and promptly remember that I don't have my key. My girlfriend, who was looking after my room while I was gone, has it with her. I call public safety to let me in, and fall asleep collapsed outside my own door like a rejected booty call. The officer arrives, unlocks my door, and lingers in the doorway while I drag my stuff inside. You gonna be okay? He asks me, probably noticing that I look like a doped up sewer rat. I give him my friendliest smile and start to answer, but not before I gag and empty the last remains of my gut into my trash can. Perfect timing. He closes the door without another word. I took a shower, passed out, and woke up at 4 p.m. with the worst headache of my life. To this day, I've never skipped a dose when flying. TL, doctor, I took an ambien 3 hours into a 6-hour flight which had me hallucinate, teleport, and vomit all the way to school. Is foretelling the apocalypse an actual, listed side effect of ambien? I always know when my grandma takes ambien, cause she'll call me at 3 in the morning delirious and babbling about how we need to get to canning and stocking up for the end. It's a semi-regular occurrence. I also had a talk once with a friend about the coming nuclear war. He was also on ambien. I'm assuming your grandma lived through the Cold War? Dude, everyone's grandma peeping lived through the Cold War, Lamau. Unless they were 15 years old when they gave birth, and then their child gave birth at 15. There may actually be someone who is a grandma who did not live through the Cold War. My cousin was 15 when she had her daughter. Her daughter had her first child at 16. Her granddaughter had her first child at 17. And that is how you end up as a great-grandmother at 48. The South has entered the chat. You should really just get your own prescription. Tell your doctor, sometimes I get nervous on airplanes. And make sure you don't check the box for frequent urination. Just curious, why not? It's from a bit by John Mulaney, where he talks about trying to get a prescription for Xanax to deal with his anxiety. He checks the frequent urination box and things get out of hand. Of hand? Well, not really. Ooh. I'm sorry. I thought I was Batman. I woke up on ambien during a red-eye flight once. I found myself in Fraggle Rock. The talking pile of garbage was over in front of the emergency exit, and there were Fraggles bouncing to and fro everywhere. Most of the people were gone, but the stewardess thankfully wasn't, and that kind of brought me back to reality. This is peeped. I better go back to sleep, I thought to myself, and passed back out without incident. Decided ambien isn't for me. Weird that the hallucinations are so potent. especially when compared to things like LSD, which, only from second-hand accounts, sound like they only manipulate what you're actually seeing. I guess the hallucinations on Ambien are like a waking dream, the sort of crazy things you'd see asleep, but awake because your brain is wanting to sleep. I watched my TV turn into a boiling cauldron. Then the imps from Diablo 2 come into my room, set up a ladder and start jumping in. It might have been an hour or so from how many walked in. Then apparently I called my wife to tell her to come home because I had to prepare her for the dragon. She worked graveyard at the hospital. I remember the imps but not the dragon. That sounds sort of scary, but I dig the Diablo 2 reference. The first month or two I started taking Ambien, I did great and felt wonderful, but then my husband went out of town. So I go out to dinner with my BFF and had a couple of glasses of wine. Went home, had another glass of wine, watched a bit of TV, then took my Ambien. Holy speep. I woke up the next morning with fresh sheets on my bed, new PJs on and the door to my deck wide open. The deck is 3 stories up and had no railings as it was being rebuilt at the time. I had zero idea WTF had happened. Found my old sheets/PJs. I had gotten sick all over them. Apparently I slept-walked for I do not know how long that night. My dog did not appear freaked out, but I sure was. Did you change your own sheets while blacked out? That's amazing. I wish I could do chores and not remember doing it, lol. I once threw up from drinking in my friend's room. He cleaned up for me and gave me a blanket and such. I thanked him the next day for being so nice about it, but he didn't even remember cleaning up because he blacked out so hard. Some people are just built different, I guess. That's hilarious, lol. Good friend you've got there, even if he didn't realize it. I've actually only blacked out once. I was alone except a few buddies on Discord. It was honestly pretty terrifying, but maybe it's better when there's other people around. Still would be awesome to do chores and not have to remember how boring it was though. I can't imagine it. I have never blacked out. I've drank so much that I puked the entire way home twice and basically was seeing double, but I unfortunately remembered all the details. Also, after my last incident of somehow driving home, seriously do it. Don't let someone else do it. I limit my intake to 1 drink per hour with water in between. I also drink maybe once or twice a month at most. I was put on Ambien as a teenager. I took it for approximately 1 week. One morning I woke up and my keys were in a different spot than where I usually left them. Then my car was not in the spot where I had parked it. When I started the car, it was missing a quarter tank of gas. I had had a vivid dream the night before that I was driving a race car up and down a nearby highway. Needless to say, I never ever touched the stuff again. Everyone reacts differently to Ambien, but for some it can be completely wild. Holy speep. That's not good. At least when I hallucinated on Ambien, it only lasted for about 20 minutes, and I was vaguely aware that I wasn't actually working in a beachside restaurant and carving important messages to my coworkers in a tree. Ambien Walrus basically sums up Ambien. You activated the teleportation sequence too late and suffered teleportation sickness. Be sure not to do it again. And also, you should probably get your own script of Ambien. Don't want your mom getting into trouble. Bro, I may be an idiot, but from the way you wrote the story, I legit thought you fly 6 hours daily to get from your home to your college. I combed the comments wondering why the F no one is mentioning this absurdity. Then I realized what you meant. Now that would be a commute. I've occasionally been on some different types of short-term sleeping pills. Ambien didn't do anything weird to me. The one I'm currently on, however, makes me sleep, eat, and send weird-ass messages to people that I don't remember until I wake up to see the replies. We finally worked out what dose I can have that makes me lucid enough to not go too crazy in the messages. But a few I wrote the first couple of days went from completely readable to complete gibberish that autocorrect couldn't deal with by the end of the message. Haha. Is it Seroquel by chance? Quetiapine? Zopiclone? How has your sleep been? I just got a prescription for under-the-tongue Suboxone Zolpidem tart, which my doctor assured me is nothing like Ambien, but everything I've found says they're similar. Either way, Zopiclone is on the list of options he gave me, so curious to know more about how things are going. Zolpidem is literally the active ingredient in Ambien. Yeah, I said that to him in the pharmacy, but they insist they are the same class of medication. Not the same medication. The issues PPL have with Ambien won't apply to the Sublinox. Needless to say, I haven't taken it yet cause I'm waiting for a night and following day my partner is around, so I have some supervision. I have never had the bad effects of this thread, but please Google it if you're worried. It seems like a lot of people aren't actually prescribed, or they don't follow directions. Ambien has a stigma thanks to its recreational or off-label use, but it can help those that actually need it. They may simply mean it is a faster-acting version, taken under the tongue aka sublingual. Either way, having someone around on new meds jik is always a good idea. My husband's uncle had a similar routine: sit down in his seat, take ambien. Then on one flight, something was wrong with the plane that they discovered in the pre-flight checks, so everyone had to deplane and cross the airport to their new plane. Crossing an airport on ambien was apparently one of his more challenging moments, so his new rule is no drugs before wheels up. I flew nonstop from ATL to Doha, Qatar one time. 30 minutes before boarding I took 2 maximum strength Benadryl pills, and when I got on board I had a glass of wine. Don't remember the pre-flight check and didn't wake up until just after touchdown, when the arrival greeting was announced. You sure planned that well. It wasn't the first time I made that flight, but it took a couple of trips before I thought to do it. When I was younger, during the bored and invincible years, we used to have ambien races. You and 4 to 5 of your friends get dropped off at a location that is like a 45-minute walk back. Take the ambien and start walking. Getting back at all is a feat. Whoever remembers the most wins. That reminds me of the time I got trapped in a tiny ditch at a golf course not far from my house. Just couldn't figure out how to transfer my weight from my back foot to my front foot in order to get up the small incline. Kept falling over and had to wait it out. Sounds a bit like when you come of the K-hole on ketamine and are frozen in place, certain that you cannot make it to the sofa 2 feet away, let alone walk. Fast travel. Speed on drugs. Ambien is notorious for teleporting. I woke up in my neighbor's swimming pool at 3 in the morning. Side note: if you have insomnia, ask for temazepam, way safer, just don't take 2 all the time. That sounds like ambien CR, not ambien. The effects of regular ambien are out of your system after an hour or so. Your mom is on the hard speep. What's CR? Controlled or extended release. Either that or Cooler Ranch. There are other sleep aids that might be safer while traveling. Ambien is a hypnotic, so you can do strange stuff while sleepwalking. A couple of Benadryl might even do the trick. I know you'd rather not experiment, given your experience, but a doctor might be able to help. Thanks for the good story, and I'm glad you're okay. Damn. And not once did you state racist things. You sure it was ambien? I had to look up what you were talking about. Saving everyone a click. Apparently Roseanne from that 90s TV show spewed some racist speep in 2018 and blamed it on ambien. Very old reference. You've got a good memory. I'm prescribed it temazepam for sleep control on shift patterns. It doesn't really work TBH. For me in single dose. So usually on 2 of the little bastards in a go. To induce sleep. I went though a bad patch at work. Was mixing melatonin and ambien to try and sleep through anxiety. Ended up needing 60 milligrams of ambien and getting badly peeped up for about 12 months afterwards with horrendous anxiety, and went what we call full on wibble or. Left the reservation for about 4 to 5 months. Don't mix melatonin and ambien. And don't use ambien if you have had a traumatic incident, or are suffering from grief. Or in my case, all 3 at the same time. It properly peeps you up. Got my certified, full loss of dignity wibble t-shirt though. I'm taking it. The drug was zopiaclone. Lol, I'm prescribed it. I intentionally stayed up after taking 2. Woke up to an empty bank account and after ordering new TV. Something similar happened to me on a flight from San Francisco to London, 10-ish hours. I live in Spain and was scheduled to land early morning in London, and had booked a flight back to Madrid that night so I could go see some friends for the day in London. Well, right as we were about to board, I took 2 over-the-counter sleeping pills, no idea what they were. Had bought them at a pharmacy in London on the way over and washed them down with a mini bottle of red wine. Well, I knocked out before we were even off the ground. The next thing I know, I wake up to a flight attendant shaking my shoulder, and I can see the cloudy but green English countryside below. Could I have really slept clear through a 10-hour flight? The answer is yes, and I felt like a complete zombie, almost as if my mind and body were separated. I struggled to wade through the long immigration line, and am surprised the immigration officer didn't take me for further questioning for fear I was drugged up. I then went to collect my bags and passed out on a bench for 5 or 6 more hours. I am really surprised no one disturbed me or stole my bags. At this point, I still felt completely out of it and with a brutally stiff neck, and I still had 5 or 6 hours till my flight, but there was no way I was making it into the city. So I staggered through the check-in for my next flight, and sat there for the rest of the day trying my hardest to not fall asleep again and miss my next flight. Brutal day all around. 010. Would not recommend. Frequent international traveler and a fan of very specific circumstances. I call it my circadian rhythm defibrillator. First off, ambien only for flights over 8 hours. Second, Ambien only after the flight is feet wet the ocean and not likely to turn around and land back at the departure crash into the ocean. Lastly, your first 20 Ambien doses must be at home in a controlled environment. Know how it affects you before using it in the wild. Never, ever see how it goes on a plane or in a hotel. You'll have no idea how you ended up in that Guatemalan prison. When I take my Ambien I sleep. If I wake up during, it's always because I have to pee. I do so and fall back asleep. I've never had all the fun other people get to have with it. Only bonus is that I did get better at lucid dreaming, which I have always practiced, so it's been neat to be able to have more control. Same here, been taking it for a while. I do fall asleep mid-sentence though lol.